Okay, so today we're going on a real journey, deep into the mountains of North India. We're headed to a place often called the country's forgotten land, Arunachal Pradesh. We're going to dive into the incredibly rich and diverse cultures of the tribes who call this remote, absolutely stunning landscape their home. Let's get into it.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? A journey here isn't just a simple trip. It's a full-on adventure into a world that's rugged, challenging, and just profoundly authentic. A place where ancient traditions are still a very real part of everyday life. And just how diverse are we talking? Well, get this. Arunachal Pradesh is officially home to more than 26 major registered tribes. And that's not even counting the over 100 sub-tribes. Each one has its own unique language, its own customs, its own worldview. It's honestly one of the most culturally vibrant places on the entire planet. So, our journey through this land of many faces is going to take us right into the lives of four really distinct communities. We're going to meet the Galo and witness their incredibly complex ceremonies. Then there are the Sherdukpen, who live at this fascinating crossroads of different faiths. We'll see the Idu Mishmi, who are master weavers of the valleys. And finally, the Wancho, the former headhunters of the eastern hills. To really understand the people here, you can't just look at what they do. You have to start with their spiritual world. Life in Arunachal is lived so closely with nature, and their beliefs are woven into the very fabric of their existence. Everything is guided by the sun, the moon, and just countless spirits. At the very heart of this spiritual world for so many tribes, like the Galo and Adi, is Donyi Polo. It's a form of animism, which is the belief that everything, from rivers to rocks to trees, has its own spiritual essence. And Donyi Polo centers this on the worship of the sun and the moon as these great creators. It shapes a life where you see the divine in every single part of the natural world. The spiritual geography of this region is just fascinating. So in the central and eastern parts, animism and shamanism are really dominant. You have shamans who act as priests, healers, and spiritual guides. But then as you move west, closer to Bhutan, you find tribes like the Sherdukpen. They practice a form of Buddhist Lamaism, which, and this is the amazing part, often coexists right alongside their older shamanistic traditions.
So, how do all these beliefs actually come to life? Well, we see them expressed in these incredibly vibrant, living traditions, from the most elaborate weddings you can imagine to seasonal festivals that bring entire communities together.
A perfect example of this is the traditional gala wedding. This is so much more than just two people getting married. It is a complex negotiation that involves entire families. It's a display of social status and a really powerful affirmation of their entire culture. Now, to even begin to understand the wedding, you first have to understand the mithun. This magnificent, semi-domesticated bovine. It's the ultimate symbol of wealth and prestige. It's basically the currency of social transactions. And it's absolutely central when it comes to negotiating the bride price.
The whole process is incredibly detailed. It starts with a formal proposal. Then, the bride makes this ceremonial journey to the groom's village. And then comes the key part, the exchange. The groom's family presents mithuns as the bride price. And in return, the bride's family gives these incredibly valuable ancestral beads, whose worth is carefully calculated to match the mithuns. It's this complex, perfectly balanced exchange of wealth and respect. And of course, these rich traditions pop up in celebrations all year long. Among the Wancho, you have the Oriya festival, which marks the sowing season with vibrant songs and dances that can go on for days. And then for the Buddhist Sherdukpen, the Losar festival, their new year, is a time for families to gather and share special sweets. Each festival is like this vital thread that just strengthens the bonds of the whole community.
And this brings us to the real heart of the matter for so many of these communities today. They are standing at a crossroads, a point where these ancient traditions are meeting the immense, and I mean immense, pressures of the modern world head on. And the conflict is just so stark. You can see this contrast everywhere. On one hand, you have traditional ways, like the intricate weaving of the Idu Mishmi, that's been passed down for generations. And on the other, the powerful pull of the modern world. The Wancho tradition of facial tattoos, once a mark of a great warrior, it's fading. And ancient languages that don't have written scripts, well, they're at risk of disappearing as the younger generations adopt new ways. On top of all this, there are modern challenges, like opium addiction, a really devastating legacy of the colonial era that still impacts communities today. So it really forces us to stop and ask a pretty important question.
but an entire way of life, a whole way of seeing the world, begins to disappear, what exactly are we all losing? Maybe the best way to think about this comes from this reflection. It suggests that maybe our role isn't to judge, but just to be observers and learners, to appreciate this rich tapestry of human difference without trying to impose our own standards on it. And so we're left with this really powerful idea. These cultures, they aren't relics in a museum. They represent a living, breathing part of our shared human story. And as the world keeps changing, the real question becomes, how do we support them in preserving this totally irreplaceable heritage for all the generations to come?